right on my face. Ooh, jeez, how is that? Right, just I'm trying to get the lighting right. It is Monday, Helen for Your Fit Studio. Just getting everything online. Oh, someone already. I'm trying to look. Why is it the one gap? Hey, Kate. Kate, the one gap. I've even put. I can't even tell you what I put up. Look, I put up something to block the sunlight, and the one gap. Why? Why is it in my face? It's just so. This sunshine. I'm so sick of sunshine. I'm so British. I'm going to moan about the fact we've got good weather. I'll find something to moan about. I'm just going to. I can't even shut it. Hey, Kate. Right, so. Oh, probably mention you on this one, Kate. FYI. Already have, but I will mention you a bit more because I'm talking about leverage. And we've talked about your leverage before on a previous podcast / interview / YouTube thing. Right, your interviews everywhere. So I'm probably gonna touch on it. Fly. I'm not just going like that, like a mad T-Rex. There's a winged object. But there's also a lot going on in the world now at 5 o'clock today. So this has kind of clashed with some other stuff. So I'm not going to tell you anything, Kate. You just need to be here. This is where the main information is at. I was like, swat away. You hope this is real flying. I've got nuts and I've started to do that imaginary things. So today's about leverage, right? So you know how I love a good definition. As always, because it gives you so much insight into what something really is. Hey, Hema, see? We'll talk about leverage today. And Hema, you've got some strong leverage as well, actually. But how I'm going to do it, I'm going to go through the definition of what a lever is. Stay with me on this, what a lever is or what leverage is. And then go around the different words that come out in this definition and then apply that from in terms of when someone is gearing towards a health and fitness goal, what they're doing and how they're using it as a term, or what they're doing during that to be successful in terms of their goals or what they're aiming for. I'm just going to recap the apology from previously because the neighbours' grandkids are in and I feel like they're using the room next door as a jungle gym. So if you hear screaming or banging, it's not me. I promise. It's right here. So you might hear there might be some interaction. So hey Pooja. So what is your leverage is the title of this one. If you think about what the lever is, right? So lever or leverage, it's a rigid, right? So it's a rigid bar on a pivot, right? Used to move a fixed load with pressure applied, right? So we're like, how on earth does this have anything to do with health fitness or goal setting, right? So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read it again. Read it again. So it's a rigid bar on a pivot used to move a fixed load with pressure applied, right? So let's take rigid. So rigid is unchanging, relentless. I've heard the word relentless before, right? So it's relentless, it's solid, and it's fixed, right? So that's rigid. That's like bang on, right? Nothing. Unstoppable. Unstoppable, that's one, right? So it's relentless, unstoppable, solid, tangible, fixed there all the time, unchanging in some ways, right? Think solid rock, granite, fixed as hell, right? That's rigid, right? So where is a rigid bar? On a pivot, right? So what's a pivot? A pivot can be changed, right? A pivot can be changed. It can be outweighed, right? Changed by different factors that might be seen or unseen, so like known or unknown factors. Something that can cause an imbalance, right? So it's causing imbalance somewhere between one place and another. The fly's attacking me. Based on what? A load with pressure. So what creates pressure? Internal or external factors, perhaps. But something creates pressure on that pivot and changes the direction. So the load changes. Right? So that's the definition, right? And there's where I've taken some words out of the definition and started to put them into place, right? So that's how it all plays together. Hey, Karen. So then let's take those elements of it and see how that applies to in terms of when you're working towards a goal or but you're visualizing. So you're visualizing a potential outcome or a goal, right? So rigid, it's almost as if rigid, we say rigid is an unchanging, relentless, solid, fixed viewpoint or position. It's almost when you talk to people who are really successful when they're using leverage or a lever against themselves, it's almost like it's a belief that they've created that they are unstoppable, right? Now, when you talk to those people, they may say things like, I feel I'm selfish. I'm putting myself first all the time. I am just fixed on my outcome, right? I can't be taken off course by anybody. I am, right? Again, let's go for those words, right? I am solid, fixed, relentless, unchanged, unstoppable, a rigid approach almost, right? Now, it doesn't mean it is that they feel that way underneath, right? But that's when they're in that moment, in a moment between a choice between one behavior and another, they are rigid, right? They believe in what they're doing as an outcome. All right, so rigid bar on a pivot. So what's a pivot when it comes to, or the point of change, if someone's on that balance, right? So when I've talked about it before, I've talked about things like how a client or how any of my clients can be changed by their environment. So what changes their environment? It can be family or friends or stress, right? Sleep. All of those factors are a change point on the pivot, right? So they may change the direction of the individual, right? But that's something that they may know or unknow. So when I talked about pivot before, I said it'd be seen or unseen, right? So it'd be seen or unseen factors that change the direction of that rigidity. So if you think about when somebody's in challenges, I'm just going to try and trap this fly out because it seems like it's going for me. I don't know how this happens. How do I even control small animals? I control the big animals now, not the small ones. So if you think about moments of which any of you watching or listening to this have been challenged in terms of your goals, that would be the pivot for you. So the pivoting point of whether or not you choose to go towards one direction or another is based on multiple factors, like the unseen things, like the unseen social events, right? The unseen friends who tempt you with food or alcohol, and the unseen stress at work that may cause you to make different choices with food, in the seen structure of personal life to work life ratio, right? All these things can change the direction of that pivot, right? Can change where, even if you are rigid, where the balance will tip based on particular outcomes. All right, so then pressure. What's pressure? Here's what's interesting, right? So you want to change the direction. So let's go back to that. So a rigid bar on a pivot used to move a fixed load with pressure applied. So someone has to apply the pressure, right? Mouthful. Okay, but how do we apply pressure when you think about a health and fitness goal? Well, we either apply it through internal. So internally, drawing on a source of strength to remain rigid and to be tipping in the direction that we want, right? To move that load in the direction we want, or our behaviours, whatever you want to call it. And we do that either internally, right, where we think of what we want, we drive towards it, we remind ourselves. So the words we use, for example, which I've got a live about that this week as well, actually. Things like I need, must do this, have to do this. So I'm applying pressure through my own internal thought process, and clients do that, right? They say it to themselves, or through applied pressure through an external source, like moi, for example, or with family members or friend members or whatever it is. The applied pressure will be either internal or external, get my teeth in, be there to apply the pressure, right? So let's think about working examples. And Kate is still here, which is awesome, right? And each of you, so Pooja and Karen, you will have and Venus actually on, looks like on Instagram as well, it's like you will all have your own reason to have walked through the door the first time, right, at the studio, all of you will have a reason that was your leverage or your reason to do this. And part of why we revisit this, and part of why Sam revisits it as well, is because often that gets lost in the pivot point of stuff, or life, if you want to call it, right? So let's think about, so Kate is a great example, and Kate's, you can listen to or watch on YouTube or on Spotify, right? So her rigidness, or her unchanged or unwavered belief, right, whatever you want to call it, her rigidity is based on something that she foresees in the future. So her pivot is for her to constantly move in that direction, move around the seen and unseen objects, because she creates pressure internally and externally through me, because she's working towards something in the future. She's working towards something that she can push towards. So if she thinks of, so for those of you who watched it, those of you who haven't, so for Kate, her granddaughter was the leverage. So for Kate, her rigid, unstoppable belief is to be able to bodyboard with her when she's of age. And I've reminded her, it's not just that, it's going to be, you know, playing football with her, dealing with her first date, you know, all the rest of it, all the stuff, all the fun stuff, right? So her rigid behaviours are towards that belief. So when it comes to a pivot where these things might be challenged, Kate has to decide, am I using that leverage? Am I creating pressure on myself externally and internally to think about where I want to push this towards because this is what I want? Or am I going to let it swing another direction? It's not, for her, that rigidity is a way for her to visualise a future where she can push towards it. And that's where when people say leverage, it's something where somebody can draw on strength, remain strong, right? Remain relentless, create pressure on themselves and pivot towards an ultimate outcome, which is for them to be healthier or stronger. Same as if you listen to Bally's or you watch Bally's interview, hers is the same. Hers is not the same as Kate's, but for her leverage is not to be where she was previously, which is seriously ill. And she can draw on that because in the moment where she wants to remain rigid and stay strong and remain doing her exercise and looking after herself, she can draw on that. And whatever comes in her way, whatever environments or situations tries to move her away from that or pivot her away from her goal, she'll apply that pressure on herself and switch that movement towards what she wants. So the thing is that everybody has, this is what I said, everyone has leverage. Everyone has a reason why they did something to start with. Now, as I said, it can get lost. It can get lost in the journey or get lost in the environment or get lost along the way. It can. I've seen it happen quite a few times. And it's interesting because they can often, it's almost like people not forget, or maybe it's possibly, and just thinking out loud, and maybe if any of you experience this, it might just not have been strong enough. The leverage wasn't strong enough to begin with, and actually it turns out to be something else. That often happens, right? So a reason that somebody comes through the door changes along the way. So a classic that I've used before is, I want to be a size 10. There's their leverage when I come through the door. Now, I've never known anybody to be so emotionally strong about being a size 10 that they will become relentless, unstoppable, like literally put themselves first, use the language, literally change their environment, their friends, their family, everything else, because they want the size 10 in such a burning, desirable way that they will do all this and become that leverage. The size 10 is very rarely a real leverage. It's a reason to start something, yes, I'll give somebody that. It's a reason. It's probably not the real reason, right? The real reason is probably something else underneath that. And it's either they're too scared to face it, or it's such a strong leverage underneath that it might as well be driving them forward before they actually say what it is, right? I've also seen that happen. Now, it's okay if you have a private leverage, you have a private reason to put pressure on yourself, to manipulate everything around you to move towards a goal. It is. It absolutely is. The thing is, the power of it is when you share it. The power of it is when you start to say it to yourself and to others, or write it, or start to really live your leverage and let people see you live it. Because that's when it becomes unstoppable, right? That's what you have to appreciate when you think about a lever or a leverage or creating force against something else, it's creating that, right? It's making it into that I keep saying unstoppable, but it is. When somebody really uses real leverage, like really understands what their leverage is, their real reason for doing something, they do actually become unstoppable. It's like a tsunami of force. Like when you see it, you go, God, yeah, that person's tapped into it. They haven't tapped into the magic of having protein with every meal, right? They haven't tapped into training 3 times a week. They've tapped into the real reason why they have a vision of something in the future and why they really want it, and they remind themselves of it every time they're in a situation where they may be taken off course, where another pressure, right, an external pressure might be applied on the other point of that rigid pivot and send them away. Well, what do? They adjust, right? They say, no, I need this, I want this because of this. And then they do it, right? And when you watch it, and I want to say it kind of blossoms, because it does actually blossom with people. It actually creates that sense of drive and passion, whatever you call it, that it's just fascinating to watch. And this is the thing, like you may or may not want to share, if you are a member, to share this with your coach, because often they can be quite private, like the real reason why you're doing something, right? It can leave you feeling exposed. It can leave you feeling that you might be judged, right? And actually though, those people, if you speak to people who truly have gotten to the bottom of why they want to do something, it's almost like a release. It's like a, how did somebody describe it before? Just freeing, I think she said. It was freeing because it's the first time she'd written it down for somebody. I remember one time she wrote it down in front of me, and that's the first time she'd ever done it, to say the real reason why she wanted to do what she was doing. And actually she felt relief that she'd let go of it, that she felt it was almost like she was unburdened by it. And actually then her next chapter of her journey was epic, mainly because she let go of what was holding her back, which was the holding on to the belief that she wanted to be a size when really she wanted something entirely different for her life. But she wasn't calling on that when she was getting stuck. She wasn't using her real leverage, whatever I want to call it. She was kind of going to something that she was comfortable at the time saying and discussing with a coach or with herself, or actually even with a partner, as it turned out, right? But once she had, right? If you haven't, this is the thing as well, it's never too late to start to understand that. It takes some work though. It does take some work. It takes some work to really reflect and say, actually, this is the real reason why I want to look and feel a certain way. This is a real reason why I want to be the way I want to be. This is a real reason why I joined in the first place. Right? It's a fascinating process, but it can still be done. Right? So if you are a member and you haven't found that yet, now's the time. Like, we're about to go into a fascinating chapter of life in general. So if you don't have a leverage, or you're not sure what your leverage is, now's the best time to actually start looking at it and start to investigate that with yourself. Right? So, bit early on the recap time. I did start early. Again, if any of you are watching that want to comment on what your leverage has been or what you've experienced, then by all means, Kate, I know you're on here and I used you as an example. Kate. But I would say Kate is unstoppable. I would say Kate is relentless. I would say Kate uses her leverage, and I remind her of it because we both create that pressure, right? So we both create the pressure. She creates it on herself, and when I think she needs a little bit of a reminder, that's what I'm there for, right? So to create that pressure, to apply the pressure, not in a horrible way, to just remind her of what and why she's doing it. So what I did was, at the top I went through what the definition of a lever is, or leverage, right? So a rigid bar and a pivot used to move a fixed load with pressure applied, right? So rigid, so the unstoppable, relentless or fixed point of view, where someone is just moving towards something so firmly and so strongly that they start to feel like they are being selfish even though they're not, right? Because they're just putting it at the forefront of everything. They are using words like, I have to, this needs to happen, can't be swayed right? Cannot be swayed from what they want. Totally focused, right? Because they're drawing on it. So what's the pivot in this situation when you think about health and fitness? Pivot is all the stuff that you come along the journey, right? So it's the countering forces that make change your direction. It's your environment, it's your friends, your family, it's the pressure of work, it's life, right? Life is almost the pivot point for most people of whether or not they succeed, because they may be seen or unseen or expected or unexpected. And all part of having that leverage is knowing how to apply an opposing force against it and say, no, you're not taking me off course. You're not moving me away from my goal. I'm going to apply more pressure, right, to get away with it. So I'm going to go away and I'm going to apply the pressure against that load. So that's where someone pulls on that internal need or desire, right? So Kate pulls, I imagine, I know if I was in your situation, I'll be pulling on that moment where I'll be bodyboarding. I could be pulling on it, seeing it, imagining her face, imagining how fun it is, remembering everything you've done to get to that point, knowing where you came from, knowing how to deal with us in the park on Saturday, right? All these beautiful and touching and memorable moments that all culminates in that. I'll be using that as my leverage. That would be, for me, if I was Kate, that would be my internal pressure I create, right? To counter that acting force against me. And then the external, right? So that's why people have coaches. It's not for us to push and force people into something. It's to remind them of the reason, to discover with them the real reason why they want to become the person they want to be. It's not size, it's not a number, it's not even sometimes a weight on a scale, right? It's the person they become, and that requires some leverage for us to say, right, do you remember when you told me this is what you wanted? Okay, so let's work towards it, let's understand it better, and let's create that balance for you. So you're pushing away, right? So you're creating that pressure, you're pivoting with your load, right? And you're creating or getting to the goal that you want. So Karen says, to prove to myself that I am, capitals, I am good enough, is a deep down reason. Ooh, Karen. I like that one. To prove to myself that I am good enough is a deep down reason. Ooh, Karen, I'd love to have a one-to-one with you. We'll explore that with you. It's great leverage. I wonder what it is that would tell you the leverage is that I'm good enough. It's a belief. I think you already are. I don't think you need to prove it, Karen, because I think you already are. Because I'll ask you, I'd do the questions that I was doing the other day, which is how true is that you're not good enough already? Because I think you are. Well, that's just me. So Kate's just put, oh yeah, see, there you go, surfing with Rose. And she's even found emojis that go with it, right? So Kate can see surfing with Rose as her leverage, her reason, her drive to do something or not do something, right? It's okay, like, don't get me wrong, and this is the thing, and if you ask Karen or anybody else who has leverage, it's not all the time solid, it's not all the time rigid, it's not all the time relentless or passionate, right? Because, like I said, you've got the pivot points, so you've got the environment that will change that and make that harder, right? But the thing is that sometimes it just takes some time to come back to leverage and keep working on it, right? Because ultimately, and I'll talk about this I've got more live. Oh, I've got good lives this week. Just gonna preempt this one. Words that change minds. Good plug, right? Other texts are available. Hey, Nikki. But these are the things when you're applying, when you're talking about pressure or moving towards a goal or thinking about what you want to succeed at. A lot of it's to do with your language, because then, and I'm going to do live in this, Karen. It's an internal thought process. So it's like using the words of I want, I must, I have to, I am, ... right? I am relentless, I am unstoppable, I am good enough, right? I can achieve this, I want to achieve this, as opposed to the challenges people have when they don't use the leverage, or maybe haven't got the leverage that works to them from a deep point of view. Is when it would be nice, I would like, this would be good. What do you notice when you hear it? I'd like to be able to surf with Rose, or I need to be able to surf with her. When I say it, because I know that Kate will probably say it differently to me, right? Which is kind of going back to that book as well. Kate may say it different to me out loud, but I know how that sounds as a coach to someone that says to me, I'd like to be a size 10, or I need to be able to go through IVF. Those two things are completely different and yet have a similar outcome in terms of someone's health, right? When someone pulls on their leverage, firstly because they use their leverage, and secondly because of the words they use around it. So there's two levels with this, right? The two levels, in fact I think it's next week, words, it's next Monday. This is really interesting, right? Because there's two things. So if I say it again, or I use Kate's, it'd be nice to go surfing with my granddaughter one day. Or I want to go surfing with my granddaughter. Two different things, right? Same outcome. But this is where when you're thinking about what your leverage is or what your goal is, whatever you want to call it, the language you use and what you use when you're getting through those moments of choice, when you think about leverage, is important, because it can dictate a whole journey, and can dictate not someone's success, because someone will always get there, because we'll support them until they, and we can talk about it and they can find what it is, etc., and be able to work with that, right? But actually it can change the direction of someone's journey massively. Like I said earlier, when somebody is able to say that, when someone like Kate sits down and says that, I'm like, oh, we are good to go. This is it, right? You're saying it, you believe it, I know it, you need it, you want it, it has to happen. This is where somebody really starts to get a result and really starts to fly. But the thing is, they have to understand it, trust it, believe it, say it, believe it when they say it too, right? And you're welcome, Karen. I know, it's the thing about that is that I think it's one that's always on someone's mind. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of clients, no matter what age, will at some point have that question if I'm good enough. I could probably do a live on that itself, but I don't know. I don't know how I'd structure it just yet. But other than just going, yes, everyone's good enough. Just practice affirmations. I am good enough. And Karen, if I was going to say that to you about some of your leverage or working on your leverage, maybe it's to understand, yes, you're good enough. And if you're not doing affirmations already, it's time to start saying them, because you are good enough already. All of us are. It just depends who we're good enough for. Like, who are we proving it to? And that can be leverage, right? You can be leverage if you know who we're trying to prove ourselves to. Like, I'm not, I started out my journey trying to prove myself to my family, right? I understand that now. Now I'm not. For a time, it was because I wanted to prove myself to Sam. Now I'm not, right? I used it as leverage. I pulled on it when things got tough. I was trying to make change to go, no, I need to prove that I'm good enough, right? That I'm enough value to somebody, that I have something to offer. And actually now it's just a case I just want to be the best, right? That's leverage enough for me. I just want to keep being better, but not to anybody else. Well, not even to myself. Just to, well, maybe to myself more. Actually, I just want to keep getting better and better. And that's my leverage now. What I would have pulled on leverage to be of value to other people previously. It's still valid, Karen, but what will be interesting is to understand who you think you're not of value to already, because that's who you're really trying to prove it to. But if it's not to you, it's potentially always to somebody else, because it was always somebody else for me until I realised what it was and then started to work on it. I did the work. Isabel, I want to look and feel as good as I do right now, always, right? And that is leverage. There you go. Hoping my iPad doesn't die. I can't see. If I go, I'm going to have to switch onto the phone. But that's really good leverage, Isabel, because it's the same thing. It's a fear, it's a push and a pull. It's leverage, because it's like, do I make this decision or not? Actually, I want to feel banging, so I've got to do the work. I've got to remain rigid. I'm going to push and apply pressure on myself to remain that, right? It's just great leverage. So that's the thing, you've got to be able to acknowledge it and know what it is. And say deep down, this is what I want and need for myself, like want and need. Not would be nice, I would like, it'd be good. Because I'm like, not sure about your leverage. I'd like to be a size 10. Ooh. I always let someone be someone's leverage, by the way. I'm not judging anybody for it. I always acknowledge it and say that's what somebody wants at that point. I know deep down there's something that's going on, right? And part of the work and why somebody comes to be coached at YouFit is they're looking for a slightly different approach and for somebody to work with them to find that as well. So it's valid, but it's still not the real leverage, right? So I've done well today. I fought off a fly, managed to get some blinds up even though I missed a big gap, but managed to manoeuvre the gap and nothing's fallen over. And I've managed to get all technology working at the same time. If only my iPad's going to die from battery in about 2 seconds. So my best go, because if I don't even have, of all the million chargers that I have, the one charger that I need in this room right now, downstairs, typical. So back tomorrow, as always. So have a lovely evening, enjoy the weather that we have, and I'll catch you tomorrow.